Imagination is daring to be who we are. It's like dancing on tabletops. And the fear stops, and the waves crash, and the stars roar, and the heart beats.
On this particular disc, Colin, for our listeners, the use of electronics, Karen McFadden, who's absolutely wonderful, her voice, they bring, in my opinion, now I could be wrong, and this is what I want to ask you, a far more urban experience, perhaps nocturnal.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who may have heard my music might describe it, and you never know as the writer of things yourself, might describe it as lyrical. And it's not a term of abuse to me, it could be to some people, but and therefore soft, I suppose, by implication. And I've been exploring lyricism quite a lot in the music that I write, partly because of the use of words and song, lyric. I mean, it's all connected. But I think there's been a turning point in the CD, the album you discuss, which is off an album called Close. And this cycle called On the Sheltering Bars came about from me wanting to collect together a group of poems connected to, as it were, relationships, love, and the I say the ups and downs of that, but the ins and outs of it possibly is a better way. And I managed to do the same old thing by collections of books. I love poetry, abounds in all the stores, and whittle it down the same way. But what I wanted to do was imbue it with something which was more than just lyricism. That's in there. I do that quite naturally. And I was getting interested at the time in new combinations of instrumental groupings. I'd previously done that in a sort of chamber opera called Science Fictions, which is also on the CD, but I took it a stage further, I guess, by implanting or sprinkling through another ingredient, which is electronics, which I was just starting to discover and experiment with in a very sort of free-form, ad hoc way at the time. I suppose I got into what people now call beats, looping and beats, and a little bit of ambience. There's a bit of an ambient wash, and there's a bit of kind of rhythmic stuff, which binds it together, and I think, as you said, creates a sort of more urban feel to it.
Softer, in the best sense of the word, and yet the electronics, even greater subtlety, greater mastery. If I may just say, one of the songs that really struck me, Colin, was Pure, the opening of it. with this Norwegian singer Elizabeth. And now this could be talking through my hat here, but what I really started to hear in it was that I felt that you were digging into her history and the cultural history of the Norwegian voice.
I mean, this is where things have moved on. I guess it's a cliche that you can tell people, it's true in sort of popular music, you tell people's development through their albums, and it's something that I hope is true, and that's why I started making albums originally, because I wanted to trace what I was doing, because it was of interest to me. And certainly the album you're talking about, Fold, is a move on from the Close album, because simply I'm developing the electronics, as you say. I'm developing the sort of relationship I have to the voice. And the significance there is I've moved away from a kind of classical voice and writing out musical parts and more into devising the parts. And so when this project came about, it was actually the embryo of it was with other singers, in fact, and eventually through a long, hard process found Elizabeth Nygaard, and she was everything that I needed, because not only was the voice right, there was extended techniques in what she was doing, there was other language things that she brought to it. We explored wordless singing, we explored different kinds of phrasing, and most importantly, the close miking technique, which I love from the popular music I listen to, as opposed to the classical aesthetic, which is far away mic, resonance of the room. And of course what that means is that you're delving deeper into it, I think you said, or something, the person's actual personality and their voice. And of course then the recording sessions become very different. This is the really important part. Recording sessions kind of in the classical world are, we've got 3 hours here, we're paying you this much, let's do this, and we'll edit whatever later as much as we can or not. This is a different process. This is like over days and days and days, trying different things out, opening out the material, changing the material, allowing improvisation to come in, exploring different languages and wordless music. And at the back end of a lot of this came this piece, Pure, which was developed in very, intimate circumstances to achieve the intimacy that it has. And it had to be the first track on the album because it kind of says everything without saying it loudly.
But another contrast to it is Coil. You mentioned it in passing. The title that I would to use from the album is Coil, made up of fragments, shards, snatches of breath, as you were saying, of those pieces. By contrast with Coil is Burn, which seems to look at the same world but through the other end. It's like through the looking glass.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. To answer that, I suppose I just have to backtrack and say that the album is called Fold, and one of the things that obviously has a multi-layered meaning. One of those meanings is to do with the procedure of the album, which is I'm folding in not only, I suppose, disparate ingredients like electronics and whatever, scoring and improvisation, but there's a sort of folding in of the way it kind of proceeds from the beginning of the album to the end, and the way that things sort of return. There's shared material between the songs, and you've just mentioned Coil and Burn. Well, they are two opposites in one sense. The voice in one of those, both fragmented pieces, one being going inwards and looking at a very kind of inward world, and one being the extrovert world.
Coil from Colin Riley's Move Ensemble from the album Fold on Squeaky Kate. And Colin Riley and Move should be playing the Sligo New Music Festival next year, Ian Wilson tells us, so we'll keep you posted on that one. Check out Colin Riley's music on Squeaky Kate. You're on Nova here on RTE Lyric FM.